Good afternoon, South Africa. Welcome to Afternoon Express, live on SABC3. Now, today's a different show because our guest has so much gravitas. We don't want to waste time talking. I hope that you're sitting in a comfortable seat with a warm cup of tea in your hands, because for the next hour, you'll be glued to your television screen. Today, we bring a story of triumph and tragedy. A story of a woman who's been through it all. Teenage pregnancy, alcoholism, drug addiction, surviving cancer, losing children, and fighting back to regain control of her life. And all of this while being a granddaughter to South Africa's most iconic historical figure, the late Tata Madiba. Joining us in the loft is Zoleka Mandela. Welcome to the loft.
Hi, thank you for having me.
So awesome to finally have you here.
Right?
Yeah.
Finally, thank you.
Right, so reading the foreword of your book, it's
Yes.
which was written by your grandmother, Winnie Mandela, it sounded like she thought the book was only going to be about your journey with cancer. Is that what you thought while writing the book?
Yeah, that's exactly what.
And then what happened?
Well, I know I had a talk with my publisher. And, you know, given our conversations that we had had.
Yeah, we have the same publisher.
Yeah, so you know.
I know what she said to you.
Right?
I know that conversation she had with you.
Yeah, and anyway, and you know, my grandmother's still unable to read my book. And I think she battles with the fact that I had gone through so much. She always says to me, darling, I find it very difficult to, you know, come to terms with the fact that you went through so much, right, with me there. With me still alive and in this world when I'm supposed to be protecting you and loving you and making sure that you're okay. So she really struggles with that.
Yeah, but the irony is that, I mean, you've had to read about what she went through.
Right.
And the struggle and the things that she had to put up with.
Yeah.
I mean, how do you kind of reconcile those two ideas?
I don't know, it's a tough one. You know, I think in our conversations, it's, my grandmother's, oh my gosh, she's my pillar of strength, as you know. You know, she's one of the most instrumental people in my life. You know, I feel like without her, and obviously my aunt and my mother, I would not be the person that I am today.
Absolutely.
You know.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I think for her, it's really, you know, I think what pains her the most is the fact that, you know, she has had to go through so much in her life. My mother has had to go through so much in her life. And now, you know, her granddaughter has had to go through so much. And I think she finds that very difficult because at some point she feels like, and my mother as well, they feel like they've failed me in a way. Now,
I'm having a full circle moment here because I was in Invictus and I played your mother.
Yeah.
And in the scene that I have opposite Morgan Freeman, I confront him about being an absent father due to his political activities.
Yeah.
And you have a moment in the book where you speak about how your mother seemed to have inherited that legacy by not being there due to political activities.
Yeah.
And how do you see that playing out and how that story has become their story and how you don't want it to become yours?
Yeah. You know, a lot has changed, obviously, since I wrote the book. I wrote the book in 2014. There's not a day that goes by that I don't speak to my mother. And I'm just like,
awesome.
Yeah, it is. There's not a day that goes by. You know, just recently I had a situation with my son, and I remember I sent her a message and I was like, Mom, this is what's going on. And she was like, yeah, baby, karma, hey? Ooh. And we laughed about it, and you know, that's just how we are. And she's just like, I'm just like, Mom, I'm so sorry for everything because I know this is not the kind of daughter that you wanted. And if it means that I spend the rest of my life trying to better myself as your daughter, then that's what I want to do because I cannot imagine my life without my mother.
And what did she say?
Well, you know, my mom is like, I always find it so strange when she says things to me like, you know, you are the strongest woman I know. Or simple things like what my grandmother will also say is, darling, I'm proud of you. And I'm just like, well, what are you proud of yet? Because I haven't rectified all the wrongs. You know, I haven't righted all the wrongs that I've caused, all the pain and the heartache that I've caused them, you know, due to, you know, my drug addiction and alcoholism. Exactly. Life.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Now, you grew up in a home with a lot of political activity and lots of cadres moving in and out of the home.
Yeah.
How did that shape you as a child growing up and the woman that you are today? Just witnessing that and hearing the conversations that were being had around you.
I mean, that was family. You know, these were people that were not there when I was born, but these people were like family to me. And I write in my book about how I feel like I kind of first learned how it felt to lose somebody. You know, every time that they were arrested by the police and would never come back home. You know, that was a loss for me. So I got used to that. You know, that was my life. You know, it wasn't like anything out of the ordinary. This was, you know, I wake up in the morning, I go to school, I come back from school, we sing freedom songs at the back of the house, and there's always activity, and
this is just your world.
You know, this is exactly.
Yeah.
That was my life.
Yeah, and in the book you speak about one day hiding a hand grenade in your bag at the age of 9. I mean, come on.
And my mom talks about that all the time, and I'm always like, Mom, really?
You hid a hand grenade in your bag at the age of 9 because you guys were coming up to a roadblock.
Yeah, right.
Would you say that that was the moment when your appetite for danger, or like a life of like, you know, that dangerous life? And
I guess I was just surrounded by it. I mean, I was surrounded by it. I guess somehow it probably, yes, had played some kind of role in my life.
Because you say you traded your dolls for knuckle dusters and a pocket knife, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, I was always trying to play it hard, you know, had the nose ring that connected to my ears.
Yeah.
And I had the pocket knife, and, you know, I wore my baggy jeans with boxer shorts, and I was always trying to act all rough and tough, and meanwhile, I'm like, you know, the complete opposite.
A marshmallow inside.
Yeah, a complete opposite.
I used to see you walking around, and I used to be like, whoa, that girl. I used to be like, I want to look like that. I want to be that. Because that's what I was going through. I was going through that. I'm going to harden up and toughen up. Because on the inside, I just feel like jelly.
Yeah.
And did that influence the kind of men you dated? Yes. And the kind of men you attracted?
Yes, definitely. You know, the bad boys. They call them the bad boys, right? The bad boys, you know, slapped me around because that meant you loved me. I made you feel something, so you loved me. You know, I craved attention from them. You know, I just wanted to feel like I belonged to someone, because that kind of made me feel like I was worth something.
Right.
Yeah.
And what are some of the most dangerous moments and places you took yourself to in relationships and situations that you allowed?
Yeah, I mean, I wrote about a situation where I was in a brothel. And this was something I did a lot because the guy that I was dating at the time frequented this place. And I remember a situation where I was in a brothel, and I was obviously surrounded by like all these men, and one of them approached me. And, you know, I then had to tell, you know, the guy that I was with at the time that, you know, somebody's trying to, you know, and I think just that interaction and watching them like almost get into a fight made me feel like, you know what, that's my man, and he's just,
whoa,
you know, and not, if he loved me, why the heck am I here? Why would you bring your girlfriend to a brothel?
Oh, absolutely,
you know?
Right?
Yeah.
And also, I mean, that idea of also, like you mentioned earlier, growing up around the anxiety of people might not come back.
Yeah.
I might wake up tomorrow and my mom might not be here.
Yeah.
When you speak about a visit in Swaziland one day, that anxiety of the next moment is so unpredictable. I don't know if the people who love me that I care about are going to be here tomorrow. What kind of woman does that make you in relationships? And how do you deal with that?
Very controlling. And I see it a lot, and I know, and I'm working on it. It's because so much in my life has happened that I've had absolutely no control over, that I feel like I need to be, you know, I need to have some sense of control.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Yeah. I recognize that. I just had a bit of a pin drop moment there. But we're going to take a short break shortly. But before we take a break, I just want to go back to you saying in the book that there was a moment when you realized that your grandfather was moved from a jail cell to a house with a swimming pool to be softened up. When did that penny drop? And was it in hindsight that you realized this, and why?
No, I mean, I was so young, you know, like I was really so young, like all those years, the years that he was behind, the years he was in prison, when he got released, I was too young for all of that stuff. And I think it's just such a pity, hey, because can you imagine how much I could write about?
I know.
All that experience of, you know, being there with him, and, you know, not having to sit, you know, between a glass window, and, you know, and how he was. I mean, I do remember things about him, like, you know, when he got released from prison, and the way he was so strict with us. You know, we had to sleep at a certain time. He always did his own bed. He did 100 push-ups every morning. So it was almost like very military, you know. But, you know, that's like, I guess that has a lot to do with obviously what he went through.
Also with who you've become. I follow your life story and I follow you on Instagram and I see that militance playing out in your life. Much more to come with Zoleka after the break when we delve a little deeper into her life. We'll be right back, don't go away. Thank you so much for joining us back on Afternoon Express. We're back on the couch with the formidable Zoleka Mandela. Now, you speak about how drugs and marijuana entered your life at the age of 9 and 13.
Yeah.
So alcohol at 9 and marijuana at 13. How were those accessible to you and what were you thinking when it was happening?
Okay, so at the age of 9, I had found a bottle of alcohol in the house. And my mom and my grandmother.
You know, as one does.
Yeah, so my mom and my grandmother weren't there at the time. With regards to the marijuana, a relative used to smoke it, so they used to buy it in a pack. So it was easy for me to steal it because they couldn't confront me with the.
How did your first high feel? I mean, you were 13.
Yeah.
How did your first high
that was
feel?
actually quite a scary and traumatic experience for me.
Right,
But it
I
wasn't
can
enough
imagine.
to steer me away from the path of addiction. And I had mixed it. You know, I had mixed the marijuana with the alcohol. You know, and that was quite a scary situation because not only were the effects of that quite scary, but I'd again placed myself in quite a dangerous situation because, you know, we had a party at the time at my aunt's place in Vereeniging. And I do remember, I think it was about 6 guys. Yeah, I think it was about 6 guys who were trying to take me upstairs because I was so high. They had found me hiding behind the bar of the house.
Right.
Because I couldn't deal with the side effects. You know, I was feeling
paranoia. You were
right,
seeing
everything. So what I did was I removed,
we know about that.
I removed myself, and I then went and I laid down I don't know why I didn't go upstairs to the bedroom, but I laid down behind the barn, so they found me there, and then they were carrying me upstairs, obviously to take advantage of me. And fortunately enough, as they were doing that, somebody that I used to hang out with, you know, prevented that from happening. So that could have been, you know, a completely different situation.
And then your journey with drugs continued.
Yeah.
How did it develop over the years?
Yeah.
And what were you thinking as it was developing? Because there's a place where you say you were walking around with an emptiness that not drugs or any man could fill.
Yeah.
And I guess you did try to fill that emptiness with relationships.
I did. And I also just, you know, I wanted to feel anything else but what I was feeling. You know,
but anything else but your reality.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So, you know, I didn't want to have to deal with how I felt about the sexual abuse, or, you know, how I felt I was partly to blame because, you know, it kept happening so many times, and it wasn't just men, it was women too, and it you know, from the age of about 9 years to the age of 14, you know, this just kept happening over and over again. And I was like, you know, maybe there's something about me that makes it okay for these people to do this to me.
Right.
And people that I loved, and people who were family, you know, family to me.
Whoa.
And so, you know, I think it was easier to be drunk and to be high, and then at a later stage start engaging in sexual activity, because those things made me feel better about myself. If I was having sex with somebody else, I felt better about myself. If I was doing a line of coke, if I was drinking or trying out different drugs, that's, you know.
Yeah. And what was your which drug were you most addicted to? Where you were like, wow, I never want to stop doing this?
Cocaine.
Yeah.
Cocaine, because cocaine I was addicted to for 10 years of my life.
What was it about cocaine that got you?
Honestly, it wasn't so much the effect of the drug, it was who I was doing it with. Because I think he was worse of a drug than the actual coke.
This was a bad relationship.
It was
obviously.
a bad relationship.
Now, take us through that. But another interesting thing is you mentioned, you refer to your relationships as zodiac signs. The main as zodiac. My Leo, my Capricorn. Yeah. Why was that?
I just didn't feel the need
to... you wanted to protect them.
Yeah, I didn't feel that. I didn't think I needed to go that route and actually, you know, detail their names. I don't think that was necessary.
I was just like, it's quite slick of you to even remember what their star signs were. I don't quite remember.
I know. I think when I was much younger in high school.
Star signs.
But you know, when we were growing up, horoscopes were a big deal, right?
Yeah, it was
You're like, are you a Cancer or are you a Pisces? No, we don't go well together. Are you a blah 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 blah? You know.
Yeah. And then your addiction got so dangerous. You even took cocaine while you were pregnant.
No.
Right, so what was happening when you fell pregnant? Did you stop?
Okay, so those were the only times I stopped. Okay. So I stopped the drinking, the cigarettes, and the cocaine when I knew I was pregnant.
Okay, my bad.
But trust you me, as soon as I'm done breastfeeding, I'm back at it again.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Okay, so tell us about your pregnancies, becoming a mother.
Yeah.
How did it first feel?
Yeah, I mean, I fell pregnant at the age of 16. You know, I lost my virginity at the back of some studio with a musician at the age of 15.
A music studio, okay.
Music studio.
Yeah. Traumatic.
And you know, it happened because I thought if I have sex with him, then he won't leave me and he won't look elsewhere. You know, so there was that pressure already at the age of 16. You know, so that happened. And then I fell pregnant. When at the time I was in Standard 6, Sacred Heart College. Wow. And I fell pregnant and I could no longer now hide my pregnancy. And I remember...
And you say you hid it for about 8 months.
I did, because by the time that my aunt found me, remember I then had run away. When my aunt found me, the first place she took me was to the gynae. And the gynae, you know, I was there on the bed, the gynae examined me, and I remember when he left, he didn't close the door properly. So then he went out to the consulting room then to speak to my mom and my aunt and my grandmother. No, my mom wasn't there. We had to go to my mom after. So my aunt and my grandmother, and I remember him saying, she's too far along.
Whoa.
And I think when he said that, I was like, but you see, this is why I left in the first place, was because I was afraid that they would make me terminate my pregnancy.
Yes.
Yeah. And so I left and I was like, I don't have money, I don't have anything, you know, in my name, but I'm gonna have this baby because I had developed this relationship with my child. And
absolutely,
my child was my best friend before I even birthed her.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. And then your journey as a mother obviously continued, but then suddenly loss struck again. I mean, I say again because you were kind of getting acclimatized to the idea of loss throughout your childhood.
Right.
And while South Africa was celebrating jubilation of the Soccer World Cup, you then lost your first child. How did that happen?
You know, actually, and I just posted something about that, you know, the other day because I have, yeah, that's my best friend, hey, Zeni. You know, she didn't deserve me as a mother at all. She honestly didn't, you know, and she had to become a mother at such a young age to my son.
Yeah, because you said she took care of
your
son.
She was his mother because I was never there. And when I was there, I wasn't emotionally there. I was always high, I was drunk. You know, I had gotten to the point where I was actually abusing drugs with my children in the same room. I'd have drug dealers come and drop off drugs with my children in the house. You know, strangers that I didn't know. You know, and when my daughter had passed away, I was in hospital. And I had been there for 10 days because I had attempted suicide. I had a psychotic episode that was induced by cocaine that I had taken. And I then had tried to burn myself alive. And mind you, at the time, I was at my mom's house.
You tried to burn yourself alive?
I tried to burn myself alive. My
With
brother...
What? How did you try to do this?
I had someone tell me to burn myself. And so by the time my brother found me, there was already fire in my room. He says I was in a trance. I was sitting with my legs crossed next to my door, which was on fire. And he says my eyeballs were literally like, you know, at the back of my head and rolling back. And he says I was almost like in a trance. And the last thing I remember was I knew my kids were coming back home from school. So I quickly left the house to go and use cocaine. Okay, and to have sex, because that's my life. I have sex, I have to drink, I have to do the drugs.
Yeah.
You know, that's the only way I can cope. So I left, went to go have sex, I went to go and do the drugs, and I came back home. I remember there was alcohol. We all had fridges in my mom's home, so we always had alcohol. So I had alcohol. I remember going outside for a cigarette, and I don't remember anything else, but I remember this guy on my left, you know, telling me to hurry up and burn yourself. So he hands me the lighter, and this is obviously all in my head. Yeah. He hands me the lighter, and he's like, hurry up. And, you know, and there was so much smoke, and that's when my brother found me because the smoke had obviously traveled to the lounge where he was sitting.
Yeah.
My children were opposite in their bedroom watching TV.
Whoa. So you lose your child and you're mourning.
Yeah.
And that wasn't the last time you were going to lose a child.
No.
How did you go through it all?
Yeah. Family. I was hospitalized again after Zenani passed on because I started mixing my antidepressants with alcohol. So there wasn't a day that I was sober. And I then had stolen my grandmother's car whilst under the influence. And I then had gotten so high and drunk at a strip club in Randburg. And I remember not being able to pretty much move. I was so high and drunk that night. I remember I couldn't even drive. And you know, thank God my father, with the help of an ex, you know, found me at the strip club. And I remember the conversation I had with him going back, and I was like, you know what, like, I need help because I'm gonna die. And it wasn't so much dying that I was worried about because I've always been suicidal. It was the fact that, okay, so if I take my life, I know for a fact that I'm not gonna end up in the same place where Zanani is, because people like me deserve to go to hell. And I know there's no ways I'm going to heaven. Whoa. You know, and that scared me. So I was like, okay, suicide is not an option. Let me get myself together so I can be a better parent to my sons, Welami.
I'm so glad you did it. Thank you so much for sharing your story with us. We're still going to talk about more amazing and triumphant things that happened afterwards in a short while. But throughout Zoleka's life, and the challenges she faced, one word that definitely describes her character is survivor, and we unpack that more after the break. Don't go away. Thank you so much for joining us on Afternoon Express live on SABC3. If you've been with us up until this point, you'll know that we've been having an incredible conversation on the couch. And this woman joining us here today is one of the most incredible people I've met. So just before the break, we touched on the loss of your children. So your third child, you then lost because he was born premature.
Yeah, but that was as a result of an infection that developed in my womb.
Right.
Yeah, so I gave birth, I was about 6 months, and very sober, you know, and I remember how I was like looking forward to welcoming my son home. You know, being a sober parent, this time I was going to do it right, you know. I was going to be sober, I was going to be clean. I had been clean for about over a year. And I just moved into a new place, and you know, I was gonna be a mom again. God was giving me this opportunity to just do it right this time around, you know. And unfortunately, he passed on 2 days after I gave birth to him, and in my arms.
Whoa.
Yeah.
I mean, how do you merge all those worlds and all these things that are happening to you? You've just become sober. You lost your first child when you weren't sober, and now it happens again. I mean, how do you? I can't imagine the self-loathing, the self-blame, the guilt. When is it enough?
Yeah.
You know.
I don't know. You know, every time I think about it, because you know, I have so many people say to me, but like, how do you even, you know? And I always think about, like, you know, what my grandfather said, like, after I lost Zenani, you know, and I write about it in the book where he asked me to sit on his lap, you know, and he was like, you know, darling, you're not the only person to have lost a child, you know, because he himself had lost a child. And he was like, I think the reason why you're losing your child is so that you can be hope to so many women out there, you know, and I think about that, and I'm like, you know, maybe I'll never, ever make sense of why all these things, you know, happened in my life, these painful things that have, like, completely changed my life. But I'm just, like, in a place where I'm like, my life couldn't be any better because I finally have purpose. I always felt like my life meant nothing to me or nothing at all, like I was worth nothing. First of all, I never thought I'd ever amount to anything. And I used to always say, I think by the age of 30, I'll be dead, you know, at the rate that I was going. But, you know, I feel like my life makes people feel like they have a purpose, because as much as I felt like, you know, purposeless after my daughter passed on, I just feel like every day is a better way, another opportunity for me to better myself and, you know, and be that beacon of hope for somebody else who's going through something that I went through, and maybe even better than that, to maybe just remind them that they always have an opportunity to make better choices, you know, in their lives.
Yeah. And then something incredible happens. You then meet Terry. Am I saying it right?
Yes.
Is it Terry?
Yes, yes, yes.
Tell us about this incredible
It's just
man.
Yeah. He's amazing, hey. Oh my gosh, Terry's so amazing. So I met him 2 months before I was diagnosed with breast cancer. And he's always been
2 months before that. So you're elated, you're in love, it's amazing. And then you think, okay, life has just thrown me a beautiful view, it's cutting me some slack.
Yeah.
And then you're diagnosed with cancer.
Yeah. And then I have a conversation with him, I think you should just leave me.
Because why stay for this?
I know that they told me that in order to save my life, I need chemotherapy. I know that they've told me that with chemotherapy, I'll be infertile. I think you should just, you know, let bygones be bygones and move on with your life. But, you know, he's always been there for me. And, you know, so we went through the journey together. I mean,
and then he says, no, I'm not going anywhere.
He says he's not going anywhere. I do my 16 cycles of chemotherapy. I get a clean bill of health a month later. 2 months later, we conceive and have our miracle child.
That is incredible. That is incredible.
Yeah.
And I mean, what's the love like with Terry? Is it that unbelievable, oh my goodness, I didn't think something like that could happen to me. And then obviously he knows about your life. You're very open about your past. And who is this incredible man?
Yeah, he is. I mean, Terry knows more than, like, Geez, anyone.
I mean, to have that kind of trust.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I shared like what, maybe about 70% of my life in When Hope Whispers. Terry knows 100% and is very accepting of who I am. He is the most supportive person ever. Terry was such a great father figure before he even became a father. You know, he was such a, you know, I think about times when I was in treatment, or say, for instance, I'd been, you know, hospitalized due to surgery from, you know, the cancer, and how Terry would go and actually clean my children's grave, you know. And that's something he did religiously without me having to ask him. And I don't, like, I always say to him, like, you know, I know it for sure that I'm a better woman for loving this man. And the fact that he's chosen me and he wants to be there, and he's just, you know, we're going to spend the rest of our lives together.
Absolutely.
You know?
Absolutely.
And I deserve that.
Yeah, you do.
I deserve that.
You
I deserve him. I do.
You deserve all of it.
Yeah.
And, you know, you're very open about your journey with cancer. You show us the scars. You show us the when you've just come back from hospital, from chemo. And my heart breaks, and I think, but you're so generous of spirit to even share that with us. And how have you been weathering this, the fight against cancer, and how did you get to where you are now?
Yeah. So, you know, I was diagnosed in 2012 at the age of 32. Then I got diagnosed again this year in April. So this year I'm 37, and, you know, it's been quite a journey, you know, and I think it's important for me to continue sharing my life story, because I know that at some point when I refused treatment for 3 months, it was because I was really in the belief that, I was of the belief that I was just going to die. You know, breast cancer had taken my aunt's life, and I just, you know, felt like I was at a time where I didn't want to die. You know, and now I'm being told I'm going to die. Because to me, when I was told you have breast cancer, all I was hearing was
death.
Now you're going to die.
It's the end.
Yeah, you know, and I got my
After
diagnosis.
all this crap, you are now going to die.
Right, and I got diagnosed with breast cancer 9 months after I buried my child, Zanawe, my third-born child. And I didn't know that at the time that I had been living with cancer for about 8 months.
Whoa.
Prior to that.
Well, and what kind of cancer was it, for those who...
It's breast cancer. So mine is estrogen positive. And, you know, this is why I've also shared so much about diet and keeping a healthy lifestyle, because, you know, the more weight I gain, the more my body is...
susceptible.
Right. So, you know, estrogen makes the cancer cells grow faster. And so with the weight, in the same way that, you know, having a baby, which is what I want to do, I'd love to have more babies, but I can't at this point, because that in itself would put me at risk.
Wow.
I
mean, you're a superwoman. Not only do you still want to have more babies, you're also studying. You're studying criminology. And you are healthy, you are fit, and you're a spokesperson for different organizations. Tell us about the triumphs and the highlights of your journey.
Yeah. I mean, like, you know, I always have people like, I was saying this to you earlier, like people always come up to me and they're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe you've gone through this, and you know, how do you do it all, or whatever. And I'm just like, guys, but you know, everything I've gone through is not new to humankind. You know, I'm just more vocal about it. And I think my wish is that not only do I serve as a mouthpiece for those that are rendered voiceless, but you know, that one day they're empowered to, you know, write their own life stories and to conquer, you know, breast cancer, addiction, or whatever it is that has penetrated their life that I have gone through.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you know, now that you're in this place of just so much recovery, so much healing in your life, if you were to confront the people who sexually abused you and molested you when you were younger now, I mean, we're not going to go into who they are, when or whatever, what would you say to them now?
I don't know if I'd want to say anything to them. You know, I don't think, I think I would probably want to say something to, you know, who I was when those things were happening, because I think the one thing for me was that it's not that I didn't have people around me who loved me and who could have helped me, who could have supported me. I just didn't know how to ask for help, and I just didn't know it was okay to scream. I didn't know it was okay to fight back. And it's the strangest thing because you almost kind of feel paralyzed. You know, it's almost as if you're no longer in your body when these things happen, you know? So I don't know if I'd actually want to say anything to them. And unfortunately, you know, I don't know, it's a weird thing because I see them. I do. I see them, and you know, it's the strangest thing because sometimes, you know, for instance, Terry won't know until I tell him, like maybe when we get home, that, babe, remember that guy that we were with earlier? He did this to me, you know, and it's just weird that at this stage in my life, it's almost as if I'm still trying to protect them, you know, by not disclosing who they are and what they said. Because, you know, mind you, this happened to me from the age of 9 up until 14. I only started talking about it, or rather telling my family at the age of 21. Yeah.
You know, it's, a thread that runs through what you describe as your need and this thing you were searching for in relationships is protection. Have you finally found it in this relationship?
Yeah, definitely. I have. And you know, it's great that I'm able to afford Zwelami, especially a stable home environment, you know, with a loving man who's just willing to go to the ends of the world for his family. And he's just, you know, he's the closest thing to perfection, honestly.
You're the closest thing to perfection.
Really? You're amazing. Thank you, babe. Thank you. I appreciate you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Now, having a famous family name puts an immense amount of pressure on any young person. After the break, I chat to psychometrist Dawn Ellingson to delve deeper into the psychology of being born into a famous family. Don't go away. Welcome back to Afternoon Express, live on SABC3. Now, if you've just joined us, today we've shared the inspiring story of Zoleka Mandela, how she overcame an incredible amount of challenges to be where she is today. We're joined now by psychometrist Dawn Ellingston to unpack some of the challenges that are typically associated with children born into prominent families. Welcome to the loft, Dawn. Lovely to have you back with us.
It's lovely to be here.
Absolutely. Dawn, what kind of relational dynamics do children in very prominent families experience?
Well, you know what, there are a number of things, Bonnie, and I think one of the most important is that they share this incredible person with the rest of the world. And anyone put in that situation, it's very difficult for a child to actually deal with what is happening, you know, and everything they do is on the center stage. And sometimes parents can't be there because they are needed or they're out doing what they do, whatever their area is that they are working or, you know, famous for. And the children very often, they miss the parents, and sometimes it's a lonely existence for those kids.
Whoa. And when children are really young, how do they typically see the role that very prominent and famous parent plays in their lives, as opposed to what the world sees and how they're experiencing it?
Okay. You see, you have the public person. As with any person, you've got the public person, you've got the private person. And for children, basically that's magnified. So you've got this very public figure, and then you have the real mum or the dad at home. And sometimes for a child, it's different. It's difficult to bring those two together, you know, and sort of see their parent as they really are at home.
Yeah.
And sometimes it creates conflict, especially in young children when they don't really understand.
Absolutely, they will. Yeah, I mean, I have two sons.
Yes.
I'm a prominent public figure.
Yes.
And so is their father.
Yes.
And even just preparing to chat to you today, I realized that there are things that my children are probably going through that I'm just dismissing as, oh, it's just kids. This is a phase that they're in, and that might be so, but that's exacerbated perhaps by the experience of being in a family like ours.
I think it's hugely magnified, you know, and everything that happens to those kids, because they are also on a pedestal, they're also under scrutiny, is never sort of private. You know, people that are not, who don't belong to famous families, stuff can happen, they can do things, and it's just the way it is.
Right.
But for a child of a prominent parent, a well-known parent, and that can be anything from a church minister's child to all the way up. What happens is that people are watching, people are scrutinizing, and the problem is you see your parent being this person, and you almost want to live up to that public image, but as we know, we're all inside people.
Wow. So the child themselves feels like their life is on a pedestal, their life is magnified, and they have to play up to that persona.
They're almost playing, they're playing,
right.
Exactly, they're playing up to a persona that, you know, no one can be everything everyone else wants them to be.
Whoa.
We all have to be ourselves.
Yeah, I'm totally freaking out right now. But what can I, as a parent or any parent watching, do to help children who are growing up in families like that? Help them deal with it better. Help them not be damaged by it.
There are two things that come to mind. I once read something that Lady Di said to her boys, and she said, "You can be naughty, just don't get caught." And I think there's something incredibly human saying to them, you know, be yourselves. You need to learn to be yourselves. But I think for a child it's hard because, you know, there are always people reading things. You know, as an adult, how difficult it is to be in that public space. Now, you've got a little person or you've got a teenage child who's still trying to come to terms with who they are, but they're continually being put into this sort of public figure by other people. And very often what happens, they're judged if they do something, and they're judged for not doing it as well.
Yeah.
And as an adult, when you've got all the filters and you understand the public, you can maybe deal with it. But as a child, it becomes very difficult.
Yeah.
Because you haven't learned yet. to actually cope with that.
Absolutely. Now, for the benefit of our conversation viewers at home, we've invited somebody who can speak from the horse's mouth themselves. Her name is Bahumi, and she's the daughter of the prolific Somizi. Hello, Bahumi.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. How are you? Welcome to Afternoon Express.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you guys for having me.
Well, please share with us firsthand what it's like growing up with a prominent parent, what it's like to have that spotlight on you all the time. And when were you first aware of it?
I mean, it's always a very tricky question to answer. Sorry, because usually when people ask that question, they ask it with a judgment that's already been made up by them already, you know.
Right.
But I guess for me, it's not necessarily that it's not necessarily that I jumped into my parents being famous or whatever, because I grew up with them already famous and I was born into, I guess, their fame. I guess it's always been very normal for me and neutral. Mm-hmm. And at home it was quite normal. I guess a normal childhood and a normal upbringing with all my values and everything. It's just that then now going out into the world, things then started to then, I guess, somewhat seem a lot different or change because of people's perceptions of you know, my parents and everything like that. You know what I mean?
Right.
So So in terms of how I was raised at home, I guess it was inverted commas normal. But only when I got out there then that I started receiving, like, for example, the judgments and the pressures and everything like that, you know. But obviously I didn't try for it not to get to me, but it hasn't been easy, you know.
It hasn't been easy, huh? I mean, I can imagine it gets lonely sometimes.
Yeah.
I mean,
I guess feeling lonely because you feel like nobody is understanding your experience unless there's somebody else with an identical experience as yours.
I mean, okay, so for me, everybody has their challenges, right? And I don't want to sound so shallow to say it's difficult being the daughter of a celebrity, but unfortunately people see it and think you have champagne problems and assume it's a shallow statement. But when you have an upbringing outside of such a limelight, it's easier to grow organically and experience those problems without the consequence of having to publicly have your parents' judgments in question or the choices in question that you make, you know, as well, regardless of how simple they are. So, for example, no one cares that Togo or Susan from Cape Town is playing Ding Dong Ditch down the hall of a hotel, you know, and if they do, you know, they're being kids and they're playing or having fun. But if Bahumi, on the other hand, is doing so, then that means that, you know, she's being reckless and a spoiled brat and a child who's taking advantage of their parents' celebrity status, et cetera, et cetera. So it then becomes difficult for people to understand, you know, your perception, you know, as well. So, because I remember when I was a child, one of the, I guess, difficulties that I would have would, so I'd have, something actually very simple. Let me actually start with something simple, where I would have my parents, let's say, give me something that, you know, I can leave you a T-shirt and I love whatever. Yeah. And my parents would be able to talk about the things that their parents got for them on their birthdays or Christmas or whatever, and it would be great. And the moment I do that, then it would be like, oh my gosh, you know, she's probably just bragging because her parents are this and her parents are that. So immediately that's like a certain judgment. I'm like, I promise you that is not the direction that I was just going. I was just saying, oh my gosh, my parents got me this or whatever, you know?
Yeah.
So,
wow. Thank you
I
so
guess we just have a different judgment on things.
Absolutely. Bahumi, we'd love to have you on Afternoon Express at a later stage to unpack it more. But thank you so much for what you've shared. And I have the pleasure of knowing both your parents, and they're both incredible people, and you're a lucky girl. Thank you. Now, the conversations have been incredible on the couch today, and we thank every one of you for participating and sending your love on social media. I have to admit, through all of this, I've worked up quite an appetite. After the break, Chef Clem joins me in the kitchen with a recipe that proves not all comfort food needs to be loaded with calories. We'll be right back.
This is your chance to win the home you've always dreamed of. SA's favorite interior design reality competition, Win a Home, sees 3 design duos transform empty spaces into lavish homes, and one of them could be yours. To enter, visit privateproperty.co.za and vote for your favorite design duo. Put yourself in line to win amazing prizes in the bi-weekly draw and automatically be entered for a chance to win the grand prize, your choice of one of 3 fully furnished designer homes in the Eye of Africa Golf and Residential Estate in the south of Joburg. The finished property will include luxurious finishes by Plascon and Caesarstone, as well as premier home appliances by Grundig, with a total prize value of more than 3 million rand. Competition details plus T's and C's can be found on the private property website. Watch the breathtaking properties come to life as the design drama unfolds and stand a chance to win the biggest prize on South African television, your very own dream home.
Welcome back to Afternoon Express. I'm in our sizzling kitchen and Clem is about to cook up a healthy midweek meal, but it packs a flavor punch, right?
Exactly.
Awesome.
And that's because of the amazing technique that we're going to cook it in, which is steaming today. So let's get started on our fish. I've got a beautiful silver fish over here. What I've done is I've just scored the flesh slightly, and we're going to start adding some aromatics to that. So the reason for the scores is so it'll kind of like those flavors will penetrate into the actual
Very
flesh.
pretty fish.
Of the fish. It's a very pretty fish. This is a silver fish. People expect
Pink
to be
and silver.
Yeah. They expect it to be like completely silver, but it's got a lot of like coppery orange tones in there, nice pink as you've mentioned. So, and people also think that silverfish are supposed to be quite small. It's not. It's quite a big fish, as you can see. So what I've done is I've got
quite
some...
a chubby one too.
It is, and that's important because you know it's got like delicious meat in there and it's really like full of flavor. Not that many bones as well. People also think that there's a lot of bones in silverfish. Not really. So you should be going out and buying your silverfish.
Are you just putting the garlic on top, or do you just sometimes just slip it
You can
into
slip
those
it in
little
there. I like putting it on
over
top.
there?
The benefit of cooking with steaming is that it kind of creates, the air itself picks up all these aromatics, so those amazing flavors keep on circulating through the fish.
Yeah.
And we're very, very lucky.
Because it's quite a soft flesh.
It is, exactly. And it's healthier. It is healthier. So we're very lucky. If I can grab the cloth here, we're in our very fancy Grundig ovens. We have multiple settings of cooking. Like your roasting, your grilling. We actually have a setting for steaming, which is really, really amazing. So I've got one over here.
Okay.
That has been steaming away nicely.
So you've added the garlic, the ginger, parsley.
I have.
And then
I've added all those beautiful, beautiful flavors. And I've got this beautiful fish that's been steamed, and you can see it combines that air and the moisture in there steaming.
Looks so
and we get this
lovely.
beautiful, beautiful fish. What
It
do you
looks
think?
absolutely lovely. Now, if you missed any of this, catch it, because you can send us, the keyword for this recipe is fish. SMS the keyword to 33650 for the full recipe and the ingredients. Thank you so much for joining us today. We love you. Happy eating. Good night. See you tomorrow.
Coming up tomorrow on Afternoon Express, we sit down with the beautiful TV presenter and entrepreneur Ayanda Tabete. Plus, we chat skincare with lifestyle and beauty blogger Victoria Tatham. All of that and more tomorrow, live at 4 p.m. on SABC3.
Search for a home on any device, anytime, anywhere. Private property, a home for everyone.
Afternoon Express, made with love by Clover.
Nada. Feel Good production.